Hello and welcome to Perspectives on Faith. I'm Khalif Watkins and I'll be your host for this episode. This time we'll be talking about faith and reason. Are the two necessarily at odds, or can they be complementary? Well, to help us explore this issue, we have today's guest. Dr. Youssef Yacoubi is an assistant professor of Arabic and comparative literature and also the director of the Arabic Studies program at Bard College in upstate New York. Dr. Yacoubi, welcome.
Thank you.
So, before we go into our conversation, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to Bard College?
Right. I'm originally from Morocco, and I did my undergraduate studies at Agadir University, which is the south of Morocco, and I majored in English and American studies. After that, I went to England and I did my graduate studies. I did a master's degree in literature at Essex University, and then later I did my PhD at the University of Nottingham, which is up north of England. I also did part of my training at Princeton University, and I spent 1 year as a graduate fellow at the Department of Comparative Literature. And after that, I also taught at Princeton University. I taught at Rutgers University, Hofstra University, and at the moment, since 2006, I started teaching at Bard College.
Oh, thank you. Now, three main countries you lived in: Morocco, England, America. Any major differences between the two that you've seen, or?
There are obviously many differences, but I think from my experience, I have basically learned and accumulated all these cultures. I still consider myself Moroccan. I'm also, I suppose, European and British, and I have been in this country since 2001, and I've learned so much. So I suppose the American experience is also part of my personality, and I suppose part of my development. So I think travel is a way of learning about yourself and a way of developing and evolving as a person, also as an academic, and also it is a way of getting to know others and getting to understand others and making sense, I suppose, of others in the world that we live in.
So when people talk about faith and reason, what exactly do they mean? I mean, how would you define these terms?
Right. I'm glad you've asked me that question, because I think it's very important to define the terms of any discussion or any debate. And this is really the root of misunderstanding or a lot of miscomprehension between interlocutors or people who try to have a conversation, because they don't define the terms that they are using, because they are mobilizing these terms in different ways. So it's always very important to define these terms. At the very basic level, I think if we want to provide a basic definition of faith, faith is an expression of trust in a transcendent being or a transcendent knowledge. So that's what we understand by faith. It's a belief. So in a sense, it is associated with a human sense of what is beyond the human, the transcendent.
Some greater reality beyond ourselves.
A greater reality, a transcendent reality. But on the other hand, reason is an application of certain principles of logic and method. And this is why many have argued over the centuries that there is a difference, or that these two are incompatible, that they are radically incompatible. You can never really reconcile them. Of course, historically, this has not been true. And so it is very important to stress the fact that faith is based, the idea of expressing this trust and this absolute reliance on a transcendent knowledge or a transcendent being is based on certain historical realities and certain historical facts. For example, it's based on a book. And we're talking here about the Abrahamic traditions. Right. So it is based on revelation, an event that is taken to be part of a divine history as well as a human history. So it's very important to realize that that others have argued that faith is not necessarily something outside reason, and it is in that sense that these can, in a sense, work together. And coincide and can be reconciled.
I'd like to go a little bit into the whole idea of historical context, because you alluded to the idea that others have argued that the two can work together. Mm-hmm. So has the definition of faith and reason changed over time as well, or?
Indeed it has, but it is very important, I think, to point out that if we were to understand faith and reason within a particular tradition, like the Islamic tradition, we have to begin with the beginning. And the beginning, in a sense, is both the book, the idea of revelation, which is an Abrahamic notion, but on the other hand, what comes after the book, the understanding of the book. And this is where reason fits in. That is, how do we understand revelation? So to understand revelation, you need another process. In addition to faith, you need another process, and that is the process of thinking, of reasoning, of using certain principles of understanding and perception. And as far as the Quran is concerned, if we go back to the book stresses the importance of actually using reason. So it concedes that man is intelligent. Because man is intelligent, man has to use reason. He has to use his mind, and he has to use certain principles that are obviously fundamentally linguistic principles, but they are also principles of understanding and principle of making sense, going back to that point, of making sense of things, making sense especially of the world and the universe. And the Quran stresses this point because it fits in with the notion that reason is important, because we human beings need to understand ourselves. That's number one. And number two, we need to understand the universe. We need to understand the order around us. So through reason, we note that this universe works and operates according to a certain structure and a certain order. And that's why reason is very important, to understand the cosmos, the universe. And in that sense, revelation, the Quran, stresses the importance of using reason as another fundamental and essential intellectual form of understanding faith and also understanding the universe around us.